Everyone, this is Kyle with K-Debate. I wanted to make a video on corruption. I wanted to make a video that's slightly different than what people may explain. And again, I'm actually wearing this hat because I just got a really bad haircut. So sorry about that. I hope it's not distracting. Corruption is one of the most problematic things in the United States and in any form of government. What corruption is, as far as I'm concerned, when I use the word, it's people with power that use their power for things that it's not meant for, whether it be for themselves or for other people or for their own agenda, which could be a group. And corruption can come in many forms because a lot of people don't want corruption. But the people that participate in the actions of corruption usually don't think they're doing anything wrong. What they think they're doing is looking after their own or trying to, do the greater good, but the greater good is generally something twisted in their mind. So what they think is right is actually very damaging or only benefits their group. And a lot of people justify it as my constituents, the people that agree with me already. But that's kind of a backwards form of, it's pretty much you're doing it for your constituents, but your constituents are only the people that you say agree with you already. So it's not actually your constituents, because when people think of their voting bloc or the people that support them, it's not support if they don't understand what you're doing. Like, if I were to say what my platform is, and I do all these things that I say I'm going to do, but then with all of that, it's like, well, these kind of people that are giving me money, or these kind of people, they really need a leg up because this other group isn't helping them. But you're biased. You have this idea of what should be, and you use your power to push that instead of what you're supposed to be pushing. And when somebody says, hey, you're not supposed to do that, they're no longer your constituent anymore. Hey, that guy's against me now. Like, even though they voted for you and they're telling you, you're supposed to do this, this, and this, and which you are, and then you're going outside of that. It's like, wait, you're bad-mouthing me now. You're not my constituents anymore. You're not one of my people. So you get this more refined exclusion, inclusion thing to justify what you do. And so a lot of people do that internally. They don't actually know that they're doing it, actively, or they are, and they're just horrible, horrible people. But it's generally like, how people use the slippery slope argument. Oh, if you do this one time, then the next time it's going to be easier, and the next time it's going to be easier. That's real. I mean, it's not something you can base an argument off of because it's a possibility, a potentiality, not guaranteed. But a lot of people will take those steps. It's like, oh, I'm not going to go to the gym today. I don't feel like going to the gym, even though I promised I'd go every day. And then, a week later, it's like, I'm really not feeling it. And, I already did one time. And then you're doing it 2 days in a row. And then you're doing it 3 days in a row. And then there's a month goes by. And then you're like, I don't need to do it anymore. So I use that as an example because a lot of people do that for New Year's resolutions. Like, I'm going to go to the gym every week. And then it's every other week. And then it's every other month. And then the year's over. And it's like, oh, whatever. Oh, why didn't I complete it? It's a very easy thing to fall into. It's a logical trap. Because it's so easy. It's the easy way out. And corruption, it's not the path necessarily of least resistance, but it's definitely a path of the most tantalizing kinds of rewards, either for you or the people you value or the groups that are supporting you. It's not a bribe. I'm using it to help people. It's a donation, or it's not a handout, or it's not a cop-out, or it's not corruption. It's, I'm doing this for the greater good, and I need their help to do it. And in a lot of ways, some people might argue that, well, it's just bringing people together. You're working with the people that you might not agree with, and you have to compromise sometimes. In some sense, yes, compromise can be good. And I've mentioned this before, don't compromise. What I'm talking about is compromising with the intention of bringing people together, not compromising in the sense of changing your morals or changing or not standing up for what actually is right. That's not what I'm saying. Compromising to bring people together, it's a form of negotiation. It's a form of unifying. Saying, we don't believe in this, or we want, let's say, we want this. Sorry, I just bumped my desk. We want $1 million. We need $1 million to do this thing that we need to do. They're not going to give you that $1 million. Well, if we negotiate, it's like, okay, we'll take 500,000 and we will help you with this, and then next year we can, and you negotiate, and that it's technically a compromise. When I say the word compromise in that context, that's what I mean. I'm not talking about morals in that sense. So I'm trying to keep the definitions clear, because I've mentioned compromise before. I do not like compromise. But for the sake of unifying, for the sake of not even necessarily negotiation, because it can also be discussion, let's agree to disagree. There's that could technically be considered a compromise, or I can't give you all of what I have, but I can give you some of what I have. I know it might be selfish, but I do need things. It's like I've given, and people have asked me for more, and I can't. I gave you what I could. This is, I'll give you a little bit more, but I won't give you a lot more. So there's a give and take for a lot of these things, and that's what I mean when I say compromise this time. So corruption, when compromising your morals, is bad, but a lot of people would take the steps of compromise, of the little steps for bad or the little steps for good. And when you're trying to unify two different minded groups, say one religious sect and another religious sect that are very, very different, say Catholicism and I guess the easiest one would be Hinduism, or somebody of another denomination of Catholicism, or any of the ones that are they interact a lot, but they're not necessarily similar enough to say let's have bygones be bygones. And what you do is you don't throw them at each other, because then they'll clash. But if you say you put them in a neutral zone, like when the Pope went to Mexico recently, they had a conversation. But if you were to put them in a hostile environment, say we want this, we need this, and that's kind of Constantinople and just a whole bunch of other places that are just always being aggravated. But a neutral zone where discussion can be made, and you can have, it's not. See, that's the thing about compromise. There's compromising situations, and then there's compromising to bring people together, and there's compromising when you sacrifice, and there's compromising when you're compromising your morals and you take something. So it's a very different word depending on how you use it, and it's very hard to use in the context of explaining something. So I'm sorry about that. But when a person becomes corrupt, when they have power and they become corrupt, there is so many ways that they can become corrupt. The most basic way I can define it is somebody, as I said, who abuses their power, but the form of corruption, the thing that causes that corruption, it can come from many different sources. It can be personal greed. It can be, this noble idea of I must obtain this power and obtain more and more and more power to do more and more good, and then you lose sight of why you were trying to do good. It's a very common trope in comic books and stuff like that, and the fall of the noble warrior and all those tropes where somebody was obtaining a power for peace or goodness, and it ended up corrupting them and them striving for more power instead of for the good of humanity or the good of whatever they're trying to fight for. And so that's a very clear cut, that person is no longer fighting for the light, they're fighting for themselves. And it's a very easy trope to manipulate for your own benefits. Like, this person's no longer holding the morals that they said you should hold them up to, or they're against you. And corruption isn't something that is obvious. It's not something that you can just say that person is corrupt unless their actions reflect that. Because if you say one thing and then you do something else, and it's very rare is it very clear, but when it is very clear, that's terrible. And I smile because there's so many examples of it right now, and it's actually really bad. And when I think of something that's really bad, it makes me nervous, and when I'm nervous, I try to make jokes, and this does not work out, but it makes people not like talking to me when I'm nervous. But when somebody says that they're above corruption, no one is inherently above corruption, and it's been actually progressively gotten more prominent in movies and in stories where this really, really uncorruptible person or entity or, group becomes corrupted in a very subtle way. I think the earliest example I could think of is, and this is again comics. It's the Green Lantern Corps. Their leaders, the old little green people, or no, they're actually blue, aren't they? They're blue, and they are corrupt. They're not all of them, but they've gotten so old and cynical, and not necessarily because they can't have emotion, but they are not there for individuals anymore. So it's all about the greater good, but the greater good is what they have defined. So there's a lot of wiggle room in there for them to do horrible things to each other, and they don't listen to each other for some reason. It messes a whole bunch of things up. But the fall from grace trope, where something has obtained ultimate power, or they've obtained great power, and they've used it for their own benefit, or, and this is a really, really subtle thing that a lot of, or maybe it's just hard to see for a lot of people, when you have a goal and you believe that goal is wholesome or beyond criticism because it is just so noble, but it's not necessarily that, because a lot of people, they don't think they're doing wrong. Even if you're outwardly just egregiously robbing people, you might say, I'm going to give this money to people that deserve it more than you, or yeah, I killed that guy, but now he's not going to hurt other people. There's different layers of justification. And I've recently been having a very, very unproductive argument with somebody online, because it's obviously online and people don't listen to anybody there. But somebody, a very good friend of mine, has been working on something for a long time, and it was leaked onto the internet. The project they were working on got leaked. And they got in a lot of trouble when it was leaked and had to shut down their project. And it wasn't anything bad, but because it was leaked, they got in trouble for it. So other people have taken up the project and have continued with it, even though the people, my friend doesn't want them to anymore. It's like, stop working on this. Don't do this anymore. I'm going to get in trouble for this being made. And not me, but the friend. And people don't care. They had this argument, because it's data, because it's zeros and ones. It's not stealing. It was online. All I did was copy and paste. It's not stealing. And in a lot of ways, it's very difficult to argue against that, because, well, you wouldn't download a car. That's stealing. Or you wouldn't download a bear, as the comedic side of the internet says. But in a lot of ways, intellectual property, or the idea of hard work being put into it, 2 years of work gone because somebody took it without their permission and posted it online for everyone to have, and then they were like, no, stop, don't take this from me, it's mine, and then they got in trouble for it because people started posting it everywhere and trying to make money off of it, and it was bad. But I was trying to talk to somebody about who was actively doing this. They were making more and trying to make money off of it, and or they were trying to make publicity for themselves so that they can future make money off of something else. They wanted their name attached to it. Their name was all over it. So this you can't do this. And they made two arguments. Well, they made a couple of arguments trying to discredit me as a person, but they made two main arguments against that it was not theft at all. One was it was intangible, so therefore no theft occurred. And the other one was it's not theft, it's archaeology. And because they stopped working on it, because they got in trouble for it, it was going to die. And I and that person have brought it to new life, and therefore I should be thanked. And I told them, well, the person that originally made it does not want you to make this. The person that owns it, that actually made it, and they own it, it's their intellectual property, does not and has asked people not to do this. I mean, the posts no longer exist, but they did originally post, don't post this anywhere. We're going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in trouble. So corruption is really easy, because when you have this idea that you're not doing anything wrong, I'm not doing anything wrong, it's good. I'm doing good, even though the person has clearly stated that it is hurting them emotionally, by reminding them of the horrible time they went through, or legally because they might have somebody come after them again. And it's just all of these ideas. It's so easy to justify. And a lot of people might agree. It's like, oh, it's just data. I can take it. But then that's also used to justify data theft, stealing people's artwork or their stories. I wrote something and I showed it to somebody, and then they just put their name on it and published it. That's theft. It's data, yes. I showed it to them. I did not give it to them. But because it's file sharing and you technically have to give them a copy, it's like handing them a book. But that's not giving them the book. It's showing it to them. If they grab it and run away with it, that's theft, and that's a physical object. But if you give them the data, what theft is there? It's a copy. You still have the original. Why didn't you publish it? Why was I able to do this? The arguments are there, but they're false arguments, because intellectual property, a lot of people do see information being like hoarded by companies, or you can't use this, or I'm going to sue you for using a likeness of like Mickey Mouse at a birthday party. Like that can be argued that that's a little nitpicky, because it's free publicity, or I'm just doing this because I really like your thing, or my kid likes my thing, or whatever. And there is argument there. But it's that as I said, it's the tantalizing, I want this, I want it. Therefore, I will justify things that might not be true. There has to be an argument. And I believe that is a step towards corruption, because it's either apathy towards the value of the other person, their arguments, or what they want. You can just be greedy and you want something from it, or you can say, well, I'm doing this for the greater good. I'm not doing something wrong. I'm giving to the people that want it and they need it, and whatever. And it's so easy to fall into it. And then the next time you might do it again, and the next time you might do it again. And in the sense of, I know this is something personal. This is something that and again, that's what I usually talk about, is something that's happening to me, or that conversation I've had, and this has been going on for several days. Of you just want it, and bugs me, because I want things. I'm not going to go out and take it. Like I might go and work for it. I'm sure the people that are making all of these new things from my friend's old work are working very hard. If you're going to work that hard, you can ask permission, and if they say no, respect it and start a new project. If they say yes, you can work on it, but it doesn't make them a bad person for saying, I don't want you to use this. I have personal investments in this that hurt when I see other people taking from it. And there is a difference between large companies hoarding information for their own financial gain, and somebody saying, please let this project die. It's caused me great hardships, and it hurts me as a person to see other people making this continuously when I've asked them not to, and that was the whole reason I got in trouble in the first place, is people not listening. So there are nuances and arguments for and against, and it's not so clear cut. And I believe that a lot of the people that do these kinds of things don't care. They actually, they have already made up their mind. And in that sense, they have become corrupted. Now, in a larger sense, in the more, worldwide affecting stuff, because that's on an individual kind of thing, government can become corrupted. And I'm going to make another video right after this about government corruption, because people's corruption and the government's corruption are they're based on the same principles. They're based off of, we're just trying to do what we think is right, though what we think is right might not be right, and we can know that, but have our minds split. So I'm going to end this video now, because it's already over 19 minutes, and I'm going to start another one immediately and talk about government corruption. So I hope to see you in that video, and I hope this one was at least semi-informative. I hope that it was at the very least entertaining, because I'm trying to be more animated. I'm trying to be more clear in what I'm saying, and it's not easy for me. I'm all over the place all the time, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one. Peace.